Since Alone in the Stars just dropped, what better way to celebrate than to share the journey of its creation? It all started with me dropping out of university to focus on this game, and just by its early access release, I'll have taken out debt, burned bridges, and done pretty much everything you shouldn't do making your first game, going all in on it needing to be successful. It's been 5 years of chasing this crazy dream of making a game full of highs and lows. Let's go back all the way to the first devlog I ever made. My first ever game devlog for a new game I'm working on called Alien Life Simulator. So the game was called Alien Life Simulator for a really long time, so you'll see me refer to it as Alien Life Simulator throughout this devlog, up until later when you see why and when I rename it to Alone in the Stars. In this first devlog, I showed this chart of a bunch of different games and talked about how I want to meld tons of different genres together, and essentially I described wanting way too high of scope. One of the things that kept coming up and keeps coming up is Rick and Morty as inspiration. I just love how creative Rick and Morty is, and how each planet feels very different, and how they have all these weird little alien creatures, and how colorful everything is, yet simple. I also showed off in this devlog the concept art of the alien character, as well as the first version of the 3D model of the character that Bjorn made. I also have the movement going right now where you can walk around. It's going to be a third-person game. Now let's go to my second devlog. This week, I made things go boom. I added combat to the game. I added explosions, I added shooting. All of the guns are placeholder right now, but I'm still very excited to have all of the groundwork now set up with the alien model as well, where you can walk around with the alien now. You can blow up stuff in the terrain, and everything's pretty much set up to start adding enemies. Already in the second devlog, I start working on the emotion system, and I show this off right here. The visuals for the UI are not done, they're not finished, but the system is kind of done, where you just press E, and then a wheel pops up, and you can select which emotion to express as an alien. And you'll see me reference the emotion system, and you'll see this emotion system evolve all across the development of this game. So I have different parts for different parts of the alien, and then I'm also going to randomly generate the materials and colors used. On to the third devlog. I spent a lot of this week working on the emotion system for the aliens, which is basically a system that dynamically keeps track of what emotion each alien is feeling, including the player. And I connected that with the wheel that I showed off last week. So now you as the player can influence the emotions that you're feeling, and then also communicating out into the world. The initial idea for why I even did this weird emotion stuff is I just wanted to integrate self-help concepts, which is something I have been into and has helped me personally into the game. My artist basically sent me the first version of the terrain and the first version of various objects for the first world. I'm now starting to put everything together, the combat, the terrain, the spawning the buildings, the spawning the aliens. I'm basically making the first version of the game where everything will be together, and it'll be ready for playtesting next Friday. Now the fourth devlog. There's a lot of new changes to the game and things I've added. One of the things I'm most proud of is the day-night cycle, which changes the skybox, the lighting, how far you can see, and as well as the intensity of the light. And there's also an effect where it looks like there's a sun or something moving that's shifting the light and the shadows as time passes. And tied to this day-night cycle is an aging system where your character gets older. This aging system never went anywhere, and this is one of many things that I spent time on that would never go anywhere, because frankly, they were bad ideas, or ideas that could be good in a different game, or with a bigger development team instead of a single coder. Another one of these ideas is the hunger system. There's 2 enemies in the game now, which you can fight and kill, and then you can eat what they give you to restore your hunger, because there's now a hunger system. We went from having one big world to many small disc worlds that you have to move between. And while right now there's already bridges connecting all the worlds, in future versions you're going to use the build system, which you can already build stuff. You can build bridges in the game right now, but in the future you'll have to build the bridges to move across the different disc worlds. I had one final devlog before the early access release of the game. Alien Life Simulator is coming out on February 18th on Steam Early Access, and I'm really excited for you all to get the chance to play it. This was because I basically went into full crunch mode and had no time for anything but working on the game. I also had to make trailers for the game, and you can see just by the trailers how much of a transformation the game went through in a very short period of time leading into release. If you're a gamer, then hit that subscribe button. Or if you're a game dev. But if you're a game dev, you should probably be a gamer. So definitely hit that subscribe button. This was the first trailer I had with the Steam page versus the new footage and new trailer showing basically a completely different game. In order to make the release date and to launch into early access initially, I had to cut a lot of ideas, and frankly, I don't think that was for the worse. I probably should have cut even more ideas and simplified the game even more. This was going to be my first game release, but I had dropped out of university for this game, and I had some money from doing contract work making games for people, and I spent basically all of my money and more money than I even had on a couple things. I spent thousands of dollars on a PR firm, a very professional PR firm. I don't want to say their name. And then I also separately spent thousands of dollars on my own terms on influencers to have them play the game on release day. And in general, I would not say that the thousands and thousands of dollars I spent were worth it, as I sold like 30 copies on release. Here's the numbers. But I don't blame the PR firm or the influencers I hired. I blame myself, because the game was not in a polished, good state. I also set the price to be way too high for the game. So really, I just made a ton of mistakes. I did make some devlogs after the early access release. So here's the first one. By saying that I appreciate and am thankful for all the people that tried Alien Life Simulator. I hear the feedback. I've seen all the feedback. I have not abandoned Alien Life Simulator. I am still working on it, both in the form of videos, in the form of Steam reviews. In this devlog, I kind of just talked in general about the game, how I felt about the launch, and thanked people for playing it. I also talked about my plans vaguely for future updates, but at this point, I was still thinking too big, I think. Though I was starting to realize some of the bigger problems with the game, which is kind of what the next devlog was covering. People got confused about what the buildings were, where to go to do what.
First of all, I need to get some food because I've got none in my inventory, and I always forget which of these many buildings contains the food. That's the bugger. So now I need to craft some way of getting off the planet, so I need to go and find the craftarium.
And that was just a reoccurring issue that I saw with almost every person that I watched play the game.
We should put some food back in. If I could just find where the food place was.
Oh no, I've been told how to do things, but now I don't remember where things are. Somewhere. It was in this devlog that I made a really big decision that has carried all the way until the 1.0 release today, which is to put the portal, or the Stargate, inspired Stargate, in the center of everything. To start the player by the Stargate and have all the gameplay kind of centered around it, instead of this vague town with a bunch of aliens, basically simplifying the gameplay loop. So in the old version, one of the main goals was getting to the mountain and getting to the big portal. Now I'm kind of inversing that, because instead of starting in a city, there is no city when you start. That you start in the middle, in the same like big island, and the portal is just there with you in the center of the island, and everything around the game is kind of centered around that portal now. So traveling to other islands is part of that portal, and traveling to other worlds is also centered around that portal. So it should hopefully unify and make it a bit clearer how to progress. I did have another devlog after this, but I just talk about myself and give a life update, so we're gonna skip this one. I wanted to give a quick update on, and let's skip the next devlog as well, as it was basically just announcing the delay in the game update for Alien Life Simulator. The update is coming next week. So this was the last devlog I made, and in it I show in the background a procedurally generated world. This update, I'm just generally sharing how the game's going and announcing things about the update. Also not super interesting. Even though I stopped doing devlogs, I did keep making updates to the game, and I kept making trailers for the updates to the game. So here is the first trailer for the first big update to the game that I made. This trailer shows what I called Alien Life Simulator 2, and it took 2 years approximately to make this update. A massive rework, refocusing the core of the game to be much closer to what it is today on 1.0 release, making changes that I kind of discussed before, focusing everything around the gate, starting you by the gate, and I also added random buffs like other popular roguelites have, like Risk of Rain, for example, and I just massively expanded the content as well, adding way more enemies, way more weapons, and I did my first attempt at adding bosses to the game.
I got into a good flow at this point of working on the game as I had a solid base now. So I did more big updates, and I made another trailer for some of these big updates. And even though there wasn't a lot of new players over the years, I did get a lot of people to play the latest version of the game, and I got pretty consistent feedback from different people. A lot of the testing was from friends, and I think the biggest thing was giving players the power fantasy, as there was a bug where a lot of enemies just constantly non-stop spawned. When this bug happened and tons of enemies spawned, people actually liked it because the power-up relied on scaling with killing enemies, so the power-ups plus the infinite mobs meant infinite power. And when a ton of enemies spawned was when the game was at its most exciting, where the biggest complaint was that basically the levels were way too big and there wasn't a lot to do in the levels, and the pacing was just wrong in the game. And to be honest, my least favorite part of Risk of Rain 2 is actually exploring the maps. So I don't really know why I made giant maps. So I've silently been working for approximately another 2 years and bringing us to today, to 1.0 launch, to again rework, refocus, and make the game much better with over 100 new power-ups, a much bigger focus on power-up and on customization, with you being able to customize your stats, your passives, your active abilities, along with all the power-ups that you can synergize in runs, and a much faster pace to the game, much smaller, more intentional maps, which Bjorn helped me design, and new bosses for every level as well. I don't think the game has ever been in such a good state, so I'm pressing release, and I don't know how it's going to go, but thank you for watching this devlog, and if you've enjoyed the journey, please give it a shot. It would mean a lot if you went down below and checked out the game. Click the video on the screen if you want to see how I made and launched a horror game on Steam in 3 months.